Good afternoon, everyone. It is the 6th of March, 2025. It's Thursday afternoon, about 2:30. We're going to be reading the 27th chapter of Acts today. This is the account of when the ship Paul was in was tossed about and went aground. When it was determined that they should go into Italy, they delivered Paul and other prisoners unto Julius, a centurion of the Augustus band. They entered into the ship. They launched, meaning to sail by the coast of Asia. And the next day they touched at Sidon. And Julius gave Paul liberty to go unto his friends to refresh himself. And when he had launched from thence, they sailed unto Cyprus. And they sailed on the sea of Cilicia, Pamphylia, Myra, and a city of Lycia. And there was a centurion found a ship of Alexandria sailing into Italy, and he put us therein. And when he had sailed slowly many days, they sailed unto Crete over against Salmone, and hardly passing it came in a place which is called Fair Havens, was a city of Lycia. Much time was spent, and when sailing was now dangerous because the fast was now already past, Paul admonished them and said, Sir, I perceive that this voyage will be with hurt and much damage, not only of the lading and ship, but also of our lives. Nevertheless, the centurion believed the master and the owner of the ship more than the things that Paul told him. And when the south wind blew softly, supposing they had obtained their purpose, they sailed close by Crete. But not long after there rose a tempestuous wind, and the ship was caught and could not bear up in the wind. And let her die. They had much work to keep the boat afloat. And after using all their strengths and helps they could, lest they should fall into quicksands, they were tossed with the tempest. The next day they lightened the ship. And the third day they cast out with tackling of the ship. And the sun and the stars didn't appear for many days. And they began to lose all hope that they would be saved. But Paul stood in the midst of them and said, If you'd listen to me, you'd not gain this harm and loss. But I exhort you to be of good cheer, for there shall be no loss of any man's life among you, but of the ship. He said, Be of good cheer, because I believe that God, it shall be even as it was told me, that I will go to Caesar. But he said, we must be cast upon a certain island. And after 14 nights, they were driven up and down. And about midnight, the shipmen sensed they drew near to some country. And they were afraid they were going to fall on rocks, so they cast 4 anchors out at the stern. And as the shipmen were about to flee out of the ship, Paul said to the centurion, Except these abide in the ship, you cannot be saved. So the soldiers cut off the ropes of the boat. Paul besought them all to take meat, saying, This day is the 14th day that we have tarried and continued fasting, and have taken nothing. I pray you, take some meat, for this is your health. For there shall not a hair fall from the head of any of you. When he had thus spoken, he took bread and gave thanks, and he ate. And when he had broken, he began to eat, and they were all of good cheer, and they also took some meat. And there were in the ship 216 souls. 216 souls. And when they had eaten, they lightened the ship and cast out the wheat into the sea. And anyway, they finally ran the ship aground, and it remained unmovable. And the soldiers' counsel was to kill the prisoners lest any of them would escape, but the centurion, willing to save Paul, kept them from their purpose and commanded that they could swim. Those which could swim should cast themselves into the sea and go to land. And some of them on board, some on broken pieces of the ship, it came to pass that they escaped all safe to land. So I'm going to give this over to Mark and have him read this entire chapter, but it's quite a account of the shipwreck of Paul on his journey to Jerusalem.
Acts chapter 27. When it is determined that we should call sail, they delivered Paul, certain other prisoners, and the one named Julius, a centurion, three of Augustus' band, enter into a ship of Atrium. We launched, meaning to sail by the coast of Asia. One, Aristarchus, a Macedonian and Thessalonica, being with us. And the next day we touched at Sidon, and Julius Quartus treated Paul, and we gave him liberty to go unto his friends to cherish himself. And when we had launched from there, we sailed into Cyprus because the winds were contrary. When sailed over the sea of Cilicia and Pamphylia, we came to Myra, the city of Lycia, and there the centurion found a ship Alexandria sailing to Italy. He put us therein. We had sailed slow many days, and scarce were come over against Cyrus. The wind not suffering us, we sailed under Crete over against Salmone. And hardly passing, it came into a place which was called the Fair Havens, high whereunto the city of Lycia. Now when much time was spent, when sailing was now dangerous, when the fast was now already past, Paul admonished them with his hand and said unto them, Sir, perceive this voyage will be with hurt and much damage, not only the lady and the ship, also our lives. Nevertheless, the centurion believed the master and the owner of the ship more than those things which were spoken by Paul, because the haven was not commodious to winter in the more part advised to depart thence also. Binding men they might attain the ship to Venice, and there to winter, which is haven and Crete, haven lie toward the southwest and northwest. When the south wind blew softly, supposing that they had obtained their purpose, losing thence they sailed close to Crete. But not long after there arose against a tempest wind, called Claudion, and the ship was caught. Connor could not bear up into the wind and let her drive. They ran into a certain island which is called Claudia. We had much work to come under the boat, which when they had taken up, they used helps, undergirding the ship and fearing lest they should fall into the quicksand, straight sail, and so were driven. We being exceedingly tossed with the tempest, the next day they lightened the ship. The third day we cast out with our hands the tackling of the ship, and when neither sun nor stars in many days appeared, and no small tempest lay on us, hope that we should be saved was then taken away. And after long substance, Paul stood forth in the midst of them, and said, Sirs, why we should have hearkened unto me, and not have loosed from Crete, gained this harm and loss, and now I exhort you to be of good cheer, for there shall be no loss of a man's life among you, but of the ship. For there God stood by me this night, the angel of the Lord God, whose I am. Hello. Sir. Saying, fear not, Paul, thou must be brought under Caesarea, and lo, God hath given thee all them that sail with thee. Wherefore, sirs, Paul will be a good church where I believe in God, and it shall be even as was told unto me. Howbeit we must be cast out of a certain island. The 14th island night was come, as we were driven up and down, and about midnight the shipmen deemed that they drew near to some country. Sound and found it 20 fathoms. When they had gone a little further, sound again and found it 15 fathoms, and fearing lest we should have fallen upon rocks, they cast 4 anchors out of the stern and wished for the day. The shipmen were about to flee out of the ship, when they had let down the boat to the sea under color as though they would have a color out. Before ship, Paul said to the centurion, to the soldiers, except ye abide in the ship, ye cannot be saved. And the soldiers cut off the ropes of the boat, let her fall. And while the day was coming on, Paul besought them all to take meat, saying, this day is the 14th day that ye have tarried, continuing fasting, and taking nothing. Wherefore I pray you to take some meat, for this is for your health, for there shall not an hair fall from the head of any of you. When he had thus spoken, he took bread and gave thanks to God in presence of them all. When he had broken it, he began to eat. They were all good cheer, and they also took some meat. Were in all on the ship 230 souls. When they had eaten enough, they lightened the ship and cast out the wheat into the sea. And when it was day, they knew not the land. They discovered a certain creek with a rocky shore, to which they were minded, if it were possible, to thrust in the ship. And when they had taken up the ship anchors of the boat, committed themselves unto the sea, and loosed the rubber bands, hoisted up the mainsail to wind, and made toward shore. And falling into a place where 2 seas met, they ran the ship aground. The forepart struck fast, remained unmovable, but the hinder part was broken with the violence of the waves. Soldiers counseled to kill the prisoners, lest any of them should swim out and escape. Centurion, willing to save Paul, kept them from their purpose, commanded they which should swim should cast themselves first into the sea and get out of the land. And the rest, some on board and some on broken pieces of the ship, so it was past that all escaped safe to land.
Well, thank you, Mark. Yeah, so we'll go ahead and probably continue in chapter 28 tomorrow.